welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another V Cinema Japanese deep dive into the V Cinema Essentials collection, Bullets and Betrayal from Arrow Video. This box set that by this point now has probably already been released, and I hope you guys are enjoying diving into that set or checking it out on the Arrow Video player, which most of those films, if not all of them, are now available on that player, which is a great opportunity to check out some really cool, unique V Cinema titles from the 90s. And if you're curious about owning the box set, you get some really cool, kick-ass extras alongside some introductions to the film, which definitely adds worth its weight in gold if you're considering buying the box set. For today's video, we're talking into the latest one, part of disc 4, I believe, which is the Danger Point, released in 1991. Just like the other videos, I'll be talking about the film itself in terms of my first impressions, and then talking about the special features alongside. Danger Point Road to Hell, released in 1991, directed by Yasuhiro Misabe, who's done the excellent Black Tide Killers, which I also have previously reviewed. Really enjoyed that film. Really fun, campy film from Radiance. Just a really great little 60s kind of like, mash of colors, very poppy, very colorful, just like a real breath of fresh air. Very different from the typical Yakuza type movies, Japanese films that I was seeing during that time period. And also has done 3 of the Stray Cat rock movies, also another kind of like 60s kind of, punk rock kind of attitude, biker movies, kind of chick films. Really interesting. I haven't got a chance to check out those films as of yet, but they're on my list for sure. Straight away, it's really nice to have a director that I'm kind of familiar with and kind of know what his style is. He has done quite a few movies in the Ronin porno kind of section during the 70s and done a lot of other thriller-based kind of content for V Cinema after this film as well in terms of Danger Point. So got a bit of an understanding of who this director is, at least from his mid-60s kind of work, and it's interesting to see his transition into kind of the 90s kind of work, which the special features side of this edition talks a little bit about that in terms of the director's work and his collaborations with other directors in that kind of same space. This film features a returning actor to the V Cinema lineup and one of my personal favorites, Aikawa, from the Neo Chimpio films 1 and 2, which I really enjoyed his performance and his character in those films. And I thought his performance was just a real too cool for school, got a really cool kind of slick kind of energy around him, with his hairstyle, with his sunglasses, and just I really liked what he did in those 2 films. And I think the collaboration with that director also really helped beefed up that material. And I thought, I'm curious to see more of his films. There's definitely quite an extensive library this actor has done, especially within the V Cinema space, and I think had more collaborations with this director as well after Danger Point Road to Hell. So definitely is a big star during that time, and he has done many of the films after V Cinema, of course, going into the 2000s. Here's one of 2 great collaborations in this film, and the highlight of what this film is trying to go for, with partnering up with, played by Joe Shishido, which also played the uncle character in Neo Chimpio, which for some reason I didn't really clock properly, kind of went over my head, but he played a really good role in those 2 movies, the Neo Chimpio movies, and is the kind of secondary billing or shared kind of screen time with Shogo in this one as well. And Joe Shishido is a great actor, also starring in previous films that I have seen within Branded to Kill, which I really enjoyed, which I thought was a really cool little kind of on-screen presence, and played a really kind of nasty hitman type character, and has a really interesting kind of deep dive into Japanese history with his humble beginnings within the kind of playing the naive kid to playing the more hard-ass badass characters, kind of hitman, ruthless characters that he would do for the late 60s, and obviously going into the 90s now, of course, playing various different types of roles throughout his career. And I thought he was really great in Neo Chimpio as the uncle character, and I think he's just as good in this film as well, playing the secondary or maybe first billing, however you want to call it, but sharing the screen time, sharing the kind of collaboration between the old generation of Toei kind of productions and kind of the 60s kind of era versus the new generation, with Show basically taking the limelight as the cool, slick kind of new generation 90s kind of actor. I think it's a really good collaboration, them 2 being on screen together, and I think they really have good chemistry. These are 2 kind of professional hitmen. They are assigned at the start of the film to basically go and track down a dirty cop. There is $20 million that have been stolen from Americans, and basically they're trying to find out what is going on. This character they've killed at the start of the film doesn't have the money, and basically has left a picture of a nurse. And from that point onwards, they're basically trying to go backwards to try and find out what is going on, where's the money, and basically do a bit of an investigation through various kind of characters and interrogations, and go through this kind of rabbit hole of a incident happened a couple of months ago involving $20 million, and we're basically trying to go backwards to find out where the money is, who's responsible, who betrayed who. And it's a classic kind of whodunit investigation type film, and you've got these 2 characters which are quite tightly bonded. They are you know, from different generational points, and you know, one is on the verge of kind of semi-retirement and one wants to kind of get out the game, and they are curious by nature, so they start to track down the nurse. The nurse basically tells them a series of events from her perspective to kind of lead them into another character, and then it kind of goes from that point onwards. The whole film for an hour and 40 is essentially a series of going from location to location, trying to find various people that are involved in this kind of I would say robbery within a robbery, essentially. You know, $20 million was kind of presented by a bunch of Americans. They come to Japan. They wanted to kind of take this money and basically want half of the Japanese currency, and obviously they got screwed over in the process, and then there's been some betrayals and backstabbings, and you know, women involved, and you know, who's done it, who's not, who's innocent, and going from that point onwards. And these two hitman characters are kind of the no-nonsense kind of people which are trying to get to the bottom of it. And you know, you get a lot of hotel sequences, there and a lot of smoking and a lot of kind of, you know, slick kind of look. You know, there is interrogations, there are killings in the film, and these two just basically want their payday essentially and potentially piss off. Very similar to what the other characters' motivations are in the film. You know, I'd say it's got a kind of similar kind of thing to Burning Dog in terms of its kind of attitude towards how robbery happens and money, and you know, basically how characters alter and change through kind of high stakes kind of money that on the table essentially. But I think this plays it very differently compared to a lot of the other films in the Visa Cinema collection. I would say going into this film, I would say it's very similar to something like Reservoir Dogs, but without, unfortunately, a lot of the tension. You know, it plays it very similar. It is missing that, I think, in the film. That's kind of the downfall of what Danger Point is. It's very kind of streamlined for an hour and 40. It doesn't really change itself up very often. I think the two main actors and their charisma and their energy, I think, is what's holding the film. And I think the intrigue of the story is definitely well told, but I think there definitely could have been a lot of good points of kind of breaking, you know, the pace up a little bit, maybe having an action moment, or maybe have some tension, or maybe having something a bit more of a standout piece. Everything feels very kind of rinse and repeat. It's not to say it's bad or anything, but it just is a very, very familiar from start all the way to the end. And while I enjoyed the ending of the film, I do think the ending could have been a lot better. I don't think it kind of has much else to say or much staying power ultimately. Once you kind of watch this film and you've kind of understood who the players are, what's happened, you know, and the ultimate conclusion, there's not really much to return back to, apart from maybe just seeing that story unfold again, or maybe seeing those actors interact with each other, which is definitely a highlight of the film, which I think is definitely very crucial to what the selling point of this film is. If you're not enjoying those actors or those performances, you're probably not going to get much from the film ultimately, depending if the story has much kind of weight to it, which I think it does. I think it has, despite quite a lot of characters, and it has this kind of Reservoir Dogs kind of feel towards it. It definitely is quite interesting, but is that staying power, that intrigue of what rewatching again, going to be something you're going to come back to maybe? I'm not too sure, but it definitely is something to check out and appreciate in terms of the bigger scope of, you know, the jumping point of this director and the actors involved and their careers within the V cinemas. It definitely has a place within this box set, and the ultimate, you know, continuation of the collaborations between these kind of, you know, creators and actors are well inside us. The extras side just mentioned, it kind of has a kind of a loose kind of, you know, feel towards Clint Eastwood's The Rook, which has Charlie Sheen in it in terms of the old generation versus the new. Definitely would say that for sure from what I have seen. It definitely has that kind of the Rookie type feel versus Reservoir Dogs in Japanese kind of setting. And I think it definitely has that kind of flavor towards it if you're curious about it. Interesting choice in terms of cinematography and lighting and editing. I think it's quite good. I think it's definitely a lot more of a confidently made directed film compared to some of the other stuff that I have seen. And I definitely would revisit this one maybe a bit more compared to some of the others. But I think it's just down to personal taste. And I would say definitely go into this film with the right expectations. It's not an action film. It's not a sleazy film. It's not a violent film. This is a investigation whodunit, essentially uncovering mystery kind of, you know, thriller that has some action moments sprinkled in here and there. So I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on that film. Please comment down below. We have a new extra called The Road to V Cinema, a brand new video essay on Danger Point Road to Hell by critic and Japanese cinema expert James Bond. The special features side was very good in terms of the video essay, about 15 minutes long, talking about the kind of the road to V Cinema essentially. You've got and he talks about this idea of the V Cinema scope being quite important to the 90s, and adds on to that conversation we've had from the previous extras in terms of these two actors and their careers, which dives into some of those films, has massive recommendations for some really cool Japanese films, which I've never heard of before. Some available on the previous Arrow video editions, and some not easy access. Some have yet to see the light of day in terms of a Blu-ray or easy access release. So definitely quite a few recommendations in terms of the careers of the directors and the actors involved in this, and how Danger Point kind of slots into that kind of space during that time, and how important this film was for the director coming back to do something like a feature film after doing a lot of TV work, after the work would dry up within the kind of the Japanese kind of market, and him virtually doing the kind of Roman porno kind of movies, and then doing TV work called Star Wolf, which is a bit of a Star Wars ripoff, and then coming back to V Cinema to do some more kind of low budget kind of, you know, thriller based content, and obviously would go off to do more movies with these actors involved, which I think is quite cool. So a really good little insightful extra. I thought it was quite interesting. Some of it I was already aware of, but some of it I wasn't, and mad recommendations and good kind of shout outs to various films to kind of keep an eye out for on the various outside this box set release. So that's been my thoughts and impressions on Danger Point Road to Hell. What are your thoughts, guys? Please comment down below. Would you recommend any more of these cinemas with these two actors in mind that maybe have not got access to it as of yet, or maybe have not got a good UK release or an English subtitled basic release yet? Love to know your thoughts and opinions, guys. Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.